friends in a podcast. We're so glad you're here. We're your hosts, Natasha and Lindsey.
Hi, friend. How are you?
Good. How are you?
It's so good to talk to you because I feel like it's been 700 years.
Yes. And add like 100 days to that.
Yeah, 700 years and 100 days.
Yes. Yes.
So that's any indicator to how our summer's going.
I think that wraps up adult friendship in a nutshell, right?
Yes, 17 missed calls and
Yes.
3 unread messages, 700 unread reels in Instagram, and also 7 reschedules.
Yes.
And yet we still haven't seen each other. So
It's true. It's true. But here it is, summertime. At least we can say we've enjoyed it, right? Some sunshine and chaos.
100%. Yes, it's been nice. I've been able to be home with my boys, and we've also been really busy, but I don't know with what, because I couldn't tell you that we've done like a lot of things. It just feels like all of a sudden we're in August and we're getting ready to go back to school. And
I feel like I turned 39 in June, blinked, and now it's August. Like, I don't even know where July went to.
yeah, no, absolutely. I feel
Yeah.
like I was saying goodbye to my coworkers. I was like, I'll be back in a month, and I'm going back to work soon. So like,
Yeah. And you just said goodbye to them last week, and that's what that feels
basically,
like.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah. No, it's been crazy.
So a question for you.
Okay.
Are you the kind of person who will forego 2 trips from the car with groceries and put 87 bags on their arms and potentially break their arms, but refuse to make 2 trips?
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm not doing it. I live in a garage apartment. So you walk in, it's like the garage is there, and then you have to walk up like 2 sets of stairs. I'm not doing that multiple times. We're loading them up as much as we can. And maybe if it gets too much, I might drop it on the little, because there's like the little landing before you go up 4 more stairs. Maybe. But even then, probably not. Probably
That's too
just,
much.
yeah, carrying it all the way.
Yeah, I would agree. The perk of having children is you can use their little arms too. But lately we've been doing a lot of shopping at like the bulk like we have a BJ's. I know you have Sam's closer to you. We don't have a Sam's Club. We have a BJ's, and so you can't bring all of that stuff in one trip because it's like big clunky boxes or like a watermelon or like, and you just can't do that. But if it is in bags, I will. What'd you say?
I said, watch me. I'm just kidding.
I'm gonna bounce on your head and then hold everything up.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that. Can you send me a video?
Yes.
So yeah, I thought today it'd be fun to talk through what it looks like to be hyper independent, because as someone who is recovering, I say I'm recovering from that. People pleasing, hyper independence, it's all a work in progress. Sometimes you can use hyper independence in a lot of different ways, but I definitely err on the side of being more independent than maybe is necessarily healthy. So what are your thoughts about being hyper independent?
I think that it is me in a nutshell, everyone. So I agree. I think that for me, it's always been something to hide weakness in a sense. Like, I can do it all by myself. I don't need anybody because needing someone is weak. And I think that that's just growing up with a lot of childhood trauma and experience, unfortunately.
I totally get it, because I didn't recognize, though, when I was like functioning that way, that it was what it was. That was my life. Like, you just get things done.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never noticed. Of course, I was younger then too, right? Didn't understand all of these things or like defense mechanisms or anything like that. And so in my brain, it was just, I can get a lot of stuff done. I'm a highly functioning person who can accomplish lots of things. And I just kind of went with that as like the way to live life, not realizing that sometimes it's to my detriment and it's okay to ask for help. And I've learned that a lot since I've been married, right? When my husband and I first started dating, he would offer to like take my bags to the car or, do stuff like that. And I would fight him on it like all the time. And he'd be like, just let me carry the bag. It's okay. I'm like, no, I got it. It's fine. And it's been unlearning, I would say, over the last 11 plus years that we've been together. Um, which is also weird to say out loud. Like, how did we get this old? That like 11 years of marriage? What?
I couldn't even tell you. I 11 years feels like things that I started doing 11 years ago feel like they just happened 2 or 3 years ago. So it blows my mind.
Yeah, same
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
That's a side note, um, but yeah, since then, like, but now I feel like because we've like worked through some stuff, and I understand that it's not a bad thing to ask for help, that like I want him to do those things, right? Like, can you fill up my car with gas? Like, I'm completely capable of doing it. I
Yeah.
can do this all on my own, but like, if you're out, can you just fill up the car? Because
Yeah.
I'd rather you do that than because I don't want to.
Yeah. No, I feel that. The environment that I grew up in from a very young age, I took on that independent mindset of I don't need anybody and I'm going to do it all by myself and watch me do it all by myself. And I have for the most part. I moved away from home, I got a job, I found my career, the path that I wanted to go down. I pay all of my own bills. I don't rely on anybody. I don't share it with anybody. And um, I look back and I joke with my mom. When I was in the 6th grade, I wrote on a piece of paper, I, Lindsay Renee Norton, will never get married. Well, that's funny now at 39 because I'm still not married, but that was at a very young age. That was me putting on paper, I don't need anybody. And
Yeah.
I attribute a lot of that to a lot of different factors, but I look back that it started at a very young age and carried with me into my adult reality. And even recently in the past year in therapy, talking to my therapist about it, like, I have to buy a house, I have to do this. And she was like, why do you have to do all of those things? And
Yeah.
my only response at that time in the very beginning of our conversations was, because I have to prove to myself that I can do it and all this. And she's like, but look how far you've come. And it's almost like my hyper independency never took credit for everywhere I had already gotten and where I had already been. Those things didn't matter. It was just I had to get to the next thing. And it was because I was just so attached to being independent that I always had to get to the next goal.
Yeah. And isn't it crazy? Like, when you're hyper independent, you're not focused on all the things you've accomplished. You're only focused on the next thing. And you didn't recognize or give credit to the things that you've already accomplished. I mean, that's a huge part of it because when you're hyper independent, nothing's quite good enough because you have
Mm-hmm.
to go to the next thing and accomplish the next goal. And I very much fall into that, like not taking credit for, like, hey, you've gotten this far, or hey, that was a big thing that you just accomplished. Like, let's pause for a second and just take that in, because it's always, nope, we got
Yeah.
to get to the next thing. And it's a hard thing to live with because then you're not able to see, wow, I really did make progress, or I really did, accomplish this hard thing. Because
Mm-hmm.
when we're hyper independent, we're just like, nope, I got to move on. I got to prove that I can do this. And yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. And I don't think that we realize like how much of a blinder we put on ourselves when we're doing stuff like that and how exhausting it is until you're over it. And it's almost like you don't even want to stop, because if you stop, you're going to think about how tired you are. And if you think about how tired you are, you're not going to keep going. And in the reality of that, like, why do we believe we have to do that on our own? Why do we believe that we have to get to the next goal by ourselves? And maybe we'd be a little less tired and a little less like pushing through all the time if we just took the blinders off and reached out for support.
Yeah, because sometimes I think it's easy to look at those things and think that being dependent on other people is a sign of weakness. And it's not a sign of weakness. It is really just, it's inviting people into the season of life that you're in. It's
Mm-hmm.
inviting people into maybe the struggle, or maybe it's, inviting people into that part of your life that you're trying to navigate. And that's okay. And it's okay to let people into those moments. And it's not always easy to like take that step and reach out for help, but
Mm-hmm.
it is worth it because then you gain so much on the other side of that, opening that door and saying, okay, I'm going to take down the shield. I'm going to take down that wall of, I've got this, and let somebody in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if we look back to any part of life, like basic life needs are community based. We need people in life. You can look back as far as like early settlers, like they did it as a community together.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that that shouldn't go unnoticed in today's world, too. Like those were simpler times, sure, and they like relied on each other a lot in different ways. And now we have so many conveniences right at our doorsteps to make it easy for us to do it by ourselves, but we were never meant to at the end of the day.
No, we weren't meant to live in silos and in like a world with so many fences. Like we're meant to be in a community of people doing life together. And so
Mhm.
much of the world does life in community. It's in our Western culture mindset that, we have our house and we have our fences and we have Amazon that can deliver anything that we need and we've got groceries that get delivered and you can almost go days if not weeks without interacting with other people because the conveniences of life
Mhm.
don't mean that you have to. And I don't
Yeah,
know that that's a good thing.
I agree with you. I when I was looking for a new job, I refused to do anything remote. I had some pretty good opportunities kind of knock on my door that were remote, but there was no way because my whole life is a life of convenience. I do the grocery pickup. I go to the ATM. I deposit most of my checks on my phone these days. Like
Yeah.
there's no need to have people interactions on that side of it. But I knew like I live by myself and I see some people throughout the week. But if I worked remotely, there could be 5 days that I don't see anyone
Mhm.
other than the person on the other side of a camera, right? And there's just something about that physical connection with people, being able to like see them laugh or just have their physical presence in your space that makes it a little bit different. So that was huge for me to find somewhere where I was sitting in an office with human beings.
Yeah, for sure. And when we talk about like being hyper independent and navigating like the struggles of life or maybe a hard season or you can fill in the blank with whatever that is, how like from your experience, like how would you open that door? Because if you're hyper independent, you don't want to be like a burden to someone and you don't want to, feel like you're putting them out because you have this thing, but you're needing help and you're not quite sure how to do it. Like, how would you start that conversation?
That's a great question. I don't know that I am good at that yet or have that answer for you yet. I mean, just even as recently, like I was going through something and didn't reach out to anyone and just kind of let my wheels spiral. It actually took you reaching out to be like, hey, can we FaceTime tonight? Because you knew something was off. So I don't know that I have that answer. I think sometimes it's you have to humble yourself, right? And realize that, like, it's okay to lean on people, that there is a healthy level of dependence. Like obviously you don't want to be the person that you can't do anything by yourself. There's a balance there too,
Yeah.
right? Like but we need people, and I think that there comes a place where you have to be humble and vulnerable and say, I'm waving the white flag, I need someone right now. um yeah, and it's, I think, learning kind of when to push through versus when to reach out, and knowing what your limitations are, knowing where you can stand by yourself and take care of it. I know we've talked about this in previous episodes, but I always go back to that scripture where Moses is on the mountain and his hands are up and
Mhm.
he gets tired and his two friends are on each side of him holding his hands up and making sure that he's winning the battle. And I that picture just stands out to me all the time in friendship, but even in this situation, like he couldn't do it by himself. And there comes a point where we can't do life by ourselves. We don't have to go through every struggle, every storm, every battle by ourselves. We just don't have to. And so I think that there's that that fine line of, okay, now's my time, wave the white flag.
Yeah, and I think if we're able to reframe it and how we think about it, that when we're asking for help or saying like I can't do this by myself, it's not because we're not capable. We know we're capable human beings. Like you and I both know that, like, you give me a task, you give me a job, I'll give you the list and we'll get it done. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's just how we operate. But just because I'm asking for help doesn't mean I'm not capable. It just means that I know where I thrive and where I need others. And in this part of my life right now, I need other people to come alongside me. And it kind of reminds me of when um, my husband and I, we went through a miscarriage in 2017. And that was one of the hardest things I'd ever walked through. And so many women shared their story with me that I had no idea. I had known them for 7+ years for some of them. And I didn't know that that was a struggle that they went through. And so when I walked, I was so grateful that they were able to share their story with me. And I walked away from that saying, I want to make sure that I talk about this often because I don't want people to have to feel like those women did when they went through it. Like, I can't talk about this. I can't share this story, whether it's a stigma that happens around miscarriage or whether it's, um, I don't know, like fill in the blank of what prevents people from sharing their struggles. But I think the more that we talk about it, the more freedom there is to share it so that when somebody else faces something as awful as miscarriage, like they don't have to do it by themselves and sit in that grief alone, because we shouldn't have to sit in grief alone. And that's just one instance of the ways that, like, in my life that I've seen reaching out for help return dividends. And it doesn't have to be something as traumatic as a miscarriage. It could just be, I'm isolating myself because I don't want to talk, and so whatever that looks like in our lives, like, it's hard either way. However, it doesn't mean that we're weak, and it doesn't mean that we're not capable. It just means I need help. And I think if we reframe it, then hopefully it would help us come to a point where we can look at healthy dependence on other
Right.
people as a good thing.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we use our independence as a wall or a shield to keep us from getting hurt, right? Because when we're vulnerable with people, now we've exposed ourselves to them and we've entrusted them with something, and they have the ability to either hurt or heal. And they can either walk with us through healing, or they can hurt us and cause us to even more isolate and to retreat, which makes it harder to open up again down the road. And I think we can probably both say that we've been vulnerable in situations and walked away hurt in those situations and relate to that piece of it. But at the same time, we can't allow that to harden our heart and harden our ability to still be vulnerable with people, to make those deeper connections with them. And it's so tricky because no one wants to feel that hurt. No one wants to feel that pain. But it's also necessary at the same time, because we have to learn to grow through. And, some of those hurts have shown me like what I want to surround myself with, the people that I want to surround myself with, which in return makes sometimes being vulnerable and reaching out for help a little bit easier, because now you've defined the type of person that you want in your life based on past experiences, so that you can have that balance of healthy relationship.
Yeah, and that's such a tricky one because as much as it hurts to be vulnerable and have somebody hurt you, on the flip side of that, we also have to be vulnerable with other people to heal. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's almost like a double-edged sword. Like, do I trust this person? Are they going to have my best interest at heart? And then if they prove themselves to not show that, then of course, like, that leaves a wound in our heart. And like you said, we can't let that stop us from creating new relationships. And I walked through that in my own life, and it's not easy. And I'm not saying this is like, hey, you got this, and just put on a happy face and a thumbs up and cheers to you, right? Like I've walked through it and it sucks and it's hard because you don't want to open up to people and you have in the back of your mind that like, what are they thinking? When is the other shoe going to drop? And how do I know that I can trust them?
Mm-hmm.
And there isn't a good answer for that, except for you have to try again.
Yeah. And trust is tricky because it's one of those things that it takes time, but you got to give trust to build trust. And it is just like you said, it's a very tricky area to be, especially whenever you're trying to break that mindset of I can do it all by myself. But no, really, you're not built to do it all by yourself. And eventually you're going to do it all by yourself to the point to where what do you have to show for it at the end of the day? Because
right.
You know, when I talk to my therapist about like those things, like, okay, like I have the apartment, I have this job, I've done this. And now the next goal is that I have to buy a house. Well, why? Well, because I have to buy a house. Like that's the end goal. Like I need to prove to myself that I can buy a house because I watched all these years something else happen and dependency. And I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be hyper dependent on someone. So now I flipped the script, right? But okay, so I buy that house and now I'm off to do whatever my mind says is the next thing. But I come home every day and I'm at that house by myself. What was the point? Because who am I enjoying it with? What am I doing? And not that that's bad. I still want to buy a house, but now my mindset has shifted that if I don't buy a house in the next 5 years, that's okay. But if you would ask me a year ago, no, by 2029, I was going to be living in a house. There was no if, ands, or buts about it, but it's okay if not, you know, kind of thing. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the house. It was just about proving one more thing to myself, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think through like just all of that, you come to like this realization, like you don't have to. And you need to sit with that. And that's really hard to sit with because I know I don't have to, but I can, is the response that I want to always give.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you're unlearning, because essentially it really is unlearning. Like we have to unlearn one way of life and decide I'm going to choose a different path for my life. Mm-hmm. And that means letting people in. That means having vulnerable conversations. That means not carrying 86 bags on 2 arms, right? Like,
I think it's changing like the inner dialogue, right? Like I can do it by myself, but do I have to? Like
that's so good.
Just breaking that. Don't put a period at that end of that sentence, but do I have to? And asking that question. And there's reasons or being reasonable about it, right? Like let's go back to the groceries. It's an easy example. If I am bringing up all of the groceries, you and I go grocery shopping together, you're hanging out at my house, and I go to lift all 87 bags, and you're just standing there like, I can help you. And I'm like, no, I got it. And I'm tripping up the stairs, and then I get upstairs, and I drop all the groceries on the floor. I'm like, oh, my arms hurt so bad. They didn't have to.
Right.
There's really no reason for that. I had somebody willing to help me right behind me to help carry the load. And I think at the end of the day, like that, but do I have to? You don't always have to.
And that ties into who are you surrounding yourself with too. Mm-hmm. And we say that a lot here, but it ties in. Like, are you surrounding yourself with people that are reaching out to you already because they recognize that you might need help? And are you willing to accept it? And I love that you said that, like, but do I have to? Like, I think that's going to ring in my head this week too, because there's still times like by all means, I have not mastered this at all. And there are still times that I try to do a lot of things on my own, but do I have to?
Yeah. Yeah. I can't do it all. Doesn't mean I'm not capable. It just means I know where I thrive and where I need others at the end of the day. And I love that saying.
Yeah. I don't think we can sum it up any other way. I think that's a great way to kind of sum up our conversation today. Just that maybe we need to reframe how we're thinking about our independence. And just because you can doesn't mean you have to. And doesn't mean that when you say that you're not capable of it. It's just a different way of thinking.
That's a wrap on this episode of Two Main Friends in a Podcast. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram. You can also send us an email at twomainfriends@gmail.com. And as always, leave us a review wherever you're listening.